Hey guys, it's Roscoe and on the Space Couch today. It appears that the Hovertank Pilot is a Hovertank Pilot no more. You remember the packaging on the Black Series, it says Imperial Hovertank Pilot. Well, according to the Ultimate Visual Guide, they are now just tank drivers and it is not a hover tank. It has wheels. I'll just show you. There's a great one of the Combat Assault Tank, as it is now being called. You see the tank commander there with that very attractive grey stripe. You see the driver there, and there's another one in here, the gunner. And obviously they're accompanied by a platoon or squad of stormtroopers. There we see the actual tank, and you see it is one of those tracked vehicles. Now, it was my understanding that in the Star Wars universe they had long since moved behind the wheel as a form of transport, and only really terribly primitive cultures still used it. Like in, say, Moving Target, where they're on an actual floating boat that's actually in the water as opposed to floating boat. That was seen as a very, very primitive form of tech. So interesting that they're using this sort of thing. So here we are. Here are the tank drops. Now, as you recall, this was the original design for the Death Trooper helmet. So let's see what it says. That particular one, he's from Salu Sami, he's a human. They're all humans. Lightweight armour. The Imperial combat driver, not even a pilot, they're a driver that can just drive any sort of vehicle as such, has changed several times during the Empire's reign, reflecting improvements in versatility and further specialisation of its vehicle operator ranks. Its latest incarnation is a partial suit of plastoid plate that provides protection but also permits the flexibility required to sit in the cramped vehicles of an armoured vehicle such as a tank. And one of them says, roll forward, crush everything ahead of us. Yes, obviously they patrol Jeddah quite frequently, and the tank is an obvious target, as we know from the movie. They also accompany, or guard rather, the Kyber crystal shipments. Let me just see. You see on here, these orange boxes are full of Kyber crystals, and I'm trying to think if that's the same sort of box we see on Star Wars Rebels, because they do try and maintain consistency across the franchise for those sorts of things. Now that tank, the TX-225, minimum crew of 3, commander, driver and gunner, as well as any vehicles and patrolling soldiers that might accompany them. The driver operates the tank. He's responsible for its mechanical upkeep of the track drive and powertrain systems. The gunner, in charge of the weaponry, and has to maintain its combat readiness all the time. So what else do we have? Okay, so it says about these ground assault vehicle crews rely on coordinated actions with multiple unit types for maximum effectiveness. Army doctrine stipulates that GAVs should not operate without adequate air or orbital cover, and wherever possible should work in tandem with infantry, which is why we see them in tandem with standard stormtroopers. While tank crews belittle foot soldiers with terms such as tiny tanks or lightfoots, infantry refer to tanks as fire magnets. Indeed. Given the rarity of Rebel Alliance army units, counterattacks on Imperial tanks typically come in the form of mines or improvised explosives. He has in his helmet a wireless telemetry receiver to interface with the tank systems. Now, I'll just go back. Yes, so it's a combat assault tank. I always thought it was going to be a hover tank, and certainly the marketing suggested that also, but I'm guessing for whatever reason it's a standard tank. I don't know if that was just story choice or if that was just something practical reasons that they just used a tank instead of a floating hover tank. So, tank commander issues orders from here. Very lightly armoured for the most part. Obviously this is what's supposed to protect them. I assume that this part is slightly more heavily armoured. What else? The soldiers that accompany it have to defer to the needs of the tank guys. The commander's helmet systems are synced with the tank's combat computer, keeping up to date on rapidly evolving situations. Now, despite its heavy armour and armament, the tanks may still be vulnerable to infantry assault. The close urban environment and elevated vantage points above the buildings and all that can be exploited by trained guerrillas to trap and target tanks. To counter such attacks, an escort of standard stormtroopers accompanies the tank's slow progress through Jeddah City. And we see here, it's essentially acting like a cargo tug. You see the Kyber crystal shipments there. There we see in there explosions. That's that big building that blows up. Speed 72 kilometers an hour on road, 45 kilometers an hour off road. It has 2 elevating medium double gun lasers. You see them there, and also there. What else? 1 forward medium double laser cannon. I'm trying to have a look. Oh yes, of course. That will be it here. I wonder if the tank's going to come out as a vehicle in the Elite series, the Deluxe series. That'd be great. Right, if you've seen the film, you'll understand this part. As the tank turns into Jeddah City's Tythoni Square, it enters a perfect ambush site. Insurgents hidden in the parapets and on rooftops open fire, throwing explosions at the tank's propulsion system. A well-placed bomb disables the tank's treads, turning it into an even more exposed target. And we do, of course, see that in the film. So it says also here, magnetically secured modules to Kyber crystal shipments. What else? The sealed hatch. Where are we here? The sealed hatch here, which is obviously for the commander station, and the elevating gun lane servo assembly, which is right at the front there. So yes, very interesting look at that. I wonder why it's not a Hovertank Pilot anymore. It must be some sort of design choice or something. Maybe it just didn't work when they saw the final effect for the Hovertank. So to hell with it. Let's just make it an actual tank because the Empire can do what it wants. There's a lot of detail on that hover tank as well there. So the cargo modules, let's see. I think this would probably be best to have a separate look. There's 2 types of that tank. Standard one is the TX225 GAVW. And then the 225 GAVR, which does use repulsor lifts to hover slightly above the ground. So that must be where that comes from. The tracked model is the one that's in use on Jeddah. So we might see the other one somewhere else. Bogie-like wheels have moved sprockted interlinked metal plates, where we know what the track is like, or treads to create crawler-like propulsion. There's a thought. We do see wheels in Star Wars. On the sand crawlers, completely forgotten about that. Well, they're Jawas. I would say they're very primitive, but they're very good with technology. So, I don't know. Interesting. I guess it must just depend on what is to hand. This grants the GAVW greater stability than a repulsor lift model and renders it immune to explosions that specifically target repulsor lift signatures. However, the track is a complex mechanism that can be compromised by lack of maintenance, as well as somewhere like Jeddah. I mean, in our own world, during various desert conflicts, something of the First Gulf War, the sand affected the tanks and the vehicles and the planes and the helicopters very, very badly. It was getting into all the parts and jamming them up. This will be true for something like this as well. A well-placed explosive charge can knock loose the metal plates, leaving an occupier motionless and vulnerable in the thick of battle. That is true, of course, for any tank. There's been a long time since there's been big tank battles, probably again the First Gulf War, or the Second World War prior to that. And yes, if your wheels go, you get stuck in mud, you're messed about. So yes, indeed. A lot of it is just technical details about the tank. It doesn't mean much to me. The tank commander, obviously he's in a slightly elevated cupola. Here we see the driver, and there is the gunner. Here we see treads. There's lots of explanations about parts of that. Turret drive motors, anti-aircraft and anti-armour laser actuator. This is obviously from the gun, I think, that's at the side. Yes, here the front gun, it mentions that one there as forward-locked anti-personnel Diamag MK2E/W medium laser cannons. Tensor field radiation, radio structure, what is it? Radiator channels, sorry. Yes, there's a lot of it. It's just very technical stuff about that. So yes, I thought we would just have another look at the former Hovertank Pilot. I guess we now have to call him the combat driver. So I'm sorry, you've been demoted. You were almost a death trooper with that helmet. Now you're not even a pilot, you're just a driver. That's the Empire, isn't it? I mean, they prefer to have, rather than specialists, like multiple specialties in one, individual specialties. That's why you have various versions of the TIE Fighter. The TIE Striker, by the way, it mentions in here, is not very popular because the higher-ups in the Admiralty do not like planes, ships, that are capable of multiple roles. They would rather have individual ones for individual missions, which means you can build loads and loads of everything instead of a handful of a few. So anyway, guys, like I said, I'm not sure what the reason was for changing it from Hovertank Pilot to Combat Tank Driver. It doesn't diminish my love for that piece. It's absolutely fantastic. That is one of the best helmets in Star Wars, I think. But like I say, he's been demoted. I'm guessing the Tarkin Initiative was not too happy with their actions on Jeddah, failing to stop the rebels, and they had to destroy it. So these guys, no longer pilots, just drivers. Please subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this content. Leave me a comment suggestion for a topic you'd like to see discussed, or like the video.